Guys, thank you again. Now that we have a main session, I first want to, because this is perfect going into this talk about disaster and radio, and not that your radio is a disaster, the actual topic is disasters. I just want to thank you guys because Pastor Jim Stewart of Calvary Chapel, Kansas City, and myself, we about a week ago, did a program that Genesis quickly, I might add, turned around in a couple of hours. A program we did on disaster relief, and a lot of you ran that on your stations, and I really appreciate that. And we've got some great response. We were on KDIA in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and they ran it in prime time. So we were very blessed to be able to do that, and thank you, Matt, for doing that really quickly for us. So John Bracken in the house comes by the way of Merritt Island and now living the living the Vida Loca in Santa Barbara. So John Bracken is going to talk to us about disasters. And what? You'll see. I'll see. John Bracken.
So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
We couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
So a little humor. So we're going to be talking, I know it says on your schedule, local listeners. Yes, local listeners in the context of a disaster. So it's really disaster preparation. So what I don't want you to do, please don't take notes. We're going to cover a lot of ground. I mean, you can take notes if you want to, but it's like even in preparing all the stuff I read, it's a little overwhelming. I do have sample planning documents, a variety, some FCC stuff, FEMA, American Red Cross had some nice things. So I've got a couple of those in a folder that I can share with you, a Google Drive folder. I can share that with you if you want to email me. I would not take notes if I were you. Let me play this. There we go, I do. Okay. So we're going to take a very broad look at disaster planning, and I'm hoping the main goal is to have you further develop whatever you've got. You have a plan, whether it's written or not, or whatever it is. You've got a plan, and it's here, and I want to move that plan to next. Or however far further along you can move it. So I think we can always be better prepared. There we go. So I just want to define terms. A serious disruption of the normal functioning of a community involving widespread loss. The loss and impact exceeds the ability of the people to effectively cope using their own resources. That's a trimmed down quote, definition from Wikipedia, and because of the near real-time availability of news, sometimes there can be a disaster or an area of loss and impact, and it may not necessarily be right where you live, but because sometimes a news cycle, they can hyper-focus on something, and it's all people are hearing. So I know for ourselves, when the Thomas Fire happened in the Santa Barbara area last December, then the ensuing Montecito mudslides that cut us off from all kinds of things. Fire, I'll take a hurricane every day over a fire. Hurricanes, they're kind of predictable. They come, they go. Yeah, it's bad, it is, but fire is really unpredictable, and it moves very quickly. And we lost a lot. I lost a lot of sleep trying to just keep an eye on things. And then it really gets interesting when you see the flames lighting up the sky about 7 miles away. Oh, but don't worry, it's not that close. I go, yeah, to you. So fires are amazingly stressful events, and you've got 24/7 news coverage. Television stations did a great job of keeping us informed, but you get into this overload. So disasters can be super stressful on your community. Sometimes if they're not right, even if the disaster itself isn't right there. A quote from one of my heroes, Louis Pasteur: "In the fields of observation, chance favors only the prepared mind." Now, I know he's talking about the field of science. But when the unexpected happens, only what you've thought out, planned for, and rehearsed, that's what you're going to end up doing. That's going to be your default. Your reactions, your thoughts, your emotions, especially as you abide in Christ and walk by the Spirit, that's what's going to allow you to remain focused and remain on task and to carry out what there is to carry out, right? So, we're going to assume for the sake of our talk that you do not have to evacuate. You're going to be around your radio station, and you're going to be able to have some kind of control over it. We did lose control during the mudslides. Really, I'm not sure what was worse. They were both different, but the mudslides that happened after the fire cut all transportation, knocked out a lot of power and communications, and it was the mudslides were kind of worse in some way because they took much longer to restore things back to normal. The water, we couldn't drink any water. It was really strange, and you couldn't get to the supermarket. You were in this. Now, we were prepared. We had things on hand, but we were absolutely, a lot of people, most people absolutely isolated. They were on one side of the side we were on the mudslide. Any case. So just about abiding in Christ. I know you're probably all very familiar with the Gospel of John in chapter 15. But Jesus says that I am the vine, you're the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can do nothing. And you can see the rest of the verse there. So staying vitally connected and continuously connected to Jesus and his words, that's what's going to enable each one of us to carry out the plans that we're going to be talking about, right? So the radio is really a context and a vehicle to communicate the love of God and the truth about Jesus into our community, our cultures, wherever we are. But to the effectiveness of your station, it really depends on really, it's connected to your walk with the Lord. So I just want to encourage you that the key to your effectiveness is your abiding in Christ. In Galatians 5:22, I know you're all super familiar with it, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering. If we live in this Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. So the fruit that Jesus is referring to in John 15, this is one aspect of that. So our abilities to make plans for our stations and our listeners, and then to carry out those plans, it needs to be inspired by and motivated by the Holy Spirit. And as believers, we have the incredible miracle of being dwelled in the Holy. We're never alone, right? Right? God doesn't take his eye off us when things get difficult. When the weathers get bad, he still holds us by his hand. He collects our tears in his bottle, and he's got books. He's keeping records of when we talk about him, and there's beautiful scriptures that describe who we are and what God does for us. So even though things might get difficult, like when you're standing in your driveway and not only can you see the flames, it's daytime and the smoke is blowing down into my driveway, into my face. I didn't have my mask on. Can't see, really hard to breathe, got to get inside. Right? So, now it's time to, the car's packed. It's go time. You need to leave, like right now. Now, unbeknownst to me, it was kind of a false alarm because the flames that caused that ash and smoke and everything, the things we were trying to get through, we thought it was so bad. It wasn't as bad as we thought it was, but at the time, we had planned properly. We had everything. It was just called get in the car and leave. It's at those times where the grace of God comes in and gives you what you need to get through it and to carry out the plan that you've laid. So a couple of assumptions. So we're just going to assume, for the sake of talking about disasters, that you're able to work on or at or near your station. Your residence is stable, safe, and secure, and that's a big deal. If that's not taken care of, you can't really do your radio work. And then whatever you've set in place to have the radio run, like we all use automation computers, it's just going to do what it's going to do, right? So your residence stable, safe, secure, and your residence might be a hotel room. We were in a hotel room for a number of days, but cell service was working, so I could manipulate KVRY, which is an LPFM radio station in Santa Barbara that I've been working on a part-time basis. I was able to make sure things were running. I do want to give a short plug for Linux, and I've been using Linux in Rivendell, which we're moving to Station Playlist, but super appreciate the stability of Linux. And I always believe what Bill said. I was like, yeah, but that's you're smart and you can code and blah blah blah. But the truth is, it's a wonderful operating system. Really enjoyed it. So. I read through a tremendous amount of material in trying to get my head around disaster planning and try and give you the best information. But what I kind of kept coming back to, I think what the Lord is bringing me back to, is that, regardless of your plans and your technology, the engineering and the content, the people are the most important thing, right? Especially if you're working with a team, you have a team of volunteers, you're working with your pastor. For a couple of months, we had FEMA in our sanctuary 6 days a week. And it was great. We had 10,000 people come to church over the course of a month and a half or so, and we're working very closely together. So we got to pray a lot together and work effectively. It was a wonderful, I would not have chosen it as a team-building exercise, but for a newly formed church staff, a new senior pastor at Calvary Chapel, Santa Barbara, it was the bomb. Like, it was just amazing. However, C.S. Lewis said this beautiful, one of my favorite quotes about keeping in mind who we actually are. There's no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat, so meaningless. Not really, right? Not really that important. It is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, or exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. This does not mean that we are to be perpetually solemn. We must play, but our merriment must be of that kind, and it is in fact the merriest kind, which exists between people who have, from the outset, taken each other seriously. No flippancy, no superiority, no presumptions. But my favorite part of that is that it is immortals with whom we relate, no matter whether they're born again or they're not. Everybody has a soul that lives inside a body, but what you see, this is temporary. The inside of that person, the real Alan, who I'll recognize in heaven, he'll probably have a full head of hair. Me too. And Chuck. We'll recognize each other, but it won't be these things. So it's really important not to relate to each other, to anybody really, just by their body language, how you see them behaving or acting, to not get sucked into really reacting psychologically. Paul in 2 Corinthians 5:16 said, "Therefore, from now on, we regard no one according to the flesh. Even though we have known Christ according to the flesh, yet now we know him thus no longer." So because we are alive in Christ and our spirits are alive, we can relate to people on a completely different level. So I know this has been like a Bible study so far, but I really want to emphasize the foundation upon which you're going to act out the plans you make, the processes that you're going to move through and think through, decisions, observations, all that. The Lord's going to show you things that are going to be perfect for your radio station, for your listeners, for your pastor, for your church. And I'm sorry, the God of the universe, who happens to be our Heavenly Father, our Abba, right, our daddy, sir, he is the most brilliant designer, engineer there ever was. He can see the whole picture, right? You know, he is in complete and total command. There's a line in a song said, Jesus commands my destiny. Well, he really is in command. So if he can see everything and he knows everything, he's the one you want to be in communication with. When the cell phone service is down, when you got no internet, and that all happened during the Thomas Fire and the mudslides, the cell service was really sketchy. On, off, good, bad, drop calls, no calls. You know, our Heavenly Father, he doesn't lose signal, right? There's no signal strength issues. He's got none of those problems. So just want to really, really hammer on staying connected to and abiding in and walking in the Spirit as you walk all these things out. So continuing to talk about people, just getting to kind of the initial, especially when a disaster comes to your own area. You and your family, that's kind of what it comes down to is the priority for everybody at Calvary Chapel Santa Barbara was take care of your family first. You've got to make sure. We were planning ahead. We were stocking up with water and food and things like that. You know, as the fire progressed up the coast along the 101 and the mountains, we're watching it get closer. You prepare. You want to make sure you've got clean food and drinking water, a safe shelter. You got personal hygiene handled. You got to be able to do laundry, have clean clothes. I mean, you don't have to, but if you can, it's a great thing. You sleep better when you're clean. It's good. And that you have a safe, secure place to sleep, that you've got transportation. So the other thing you want to keep in mind is that the people that your neighbors, the people you live and work around, go to church with, meet in the grocery store, they are having the same emotions. They might be having difficulty focusing a lot. That was a big thing we saw after the mudslides kind of disrupted everything. And the trains were the first thing that could get through. So we were hopping on the train to get to Santa Barbara. But the people were just dazed and confused. They walked around, and you asked them, you know, can I help? How can I help you? And they go, I don't really know. I just, you know, and you slowly get it out of them. But there was this deer in the headlights look for a lot of folks. Difficulties like disasters, sometimes they can bring back memories. There's trauma-induced memories, things people start to relive or recall. And you know, people may not be having those things, but just know that your listener, right? Rob was talking about, you know, you're really, even if you're talking to a group of people, it's really a one-on-one thing. So your listener, you don't know what they're going through, and as you're seeking the Lord and walking in the Spirit, God's going to give you ideas. He's going to give you things to say and do, and you want to be following Him. So just more about people knowing your listeners. You know, all of us, anybody not streaming their audio, their radio station over the internet, anybody not doing that? Okay. Most of us are. So you've got lots of listeners, and you know, proximity, location, you know, where someone is relative to you is kind of going away. Not that it doesn't matter that much, but you've got your local over-the-air listeners, you've got your internet listeners, local, regional, even in the United States. Then you've got your internet listeners that are international. I know, running WRDJ for a while in Florida, we had this guy in Bristol, England. Every day, every weeknight, like 11 p.m. their time, bang, guy was tuned in. So I would I wouldn't talk to him directly, but we emailed a couple times. But I would say things. I would say, so you're listening to WRDJ, Merritt Island, the mainland of the beaches in Bristol, England. So you could drop this in because that's where we've got listeners in KVRY in China. And we're pretty sure they're missionaries, but you just never know where people are going to be listening from. And you can find out some of that. Anybody not aware of the analytics and some of the information you can get on your listeners, right? There's Google Analytics. Squarespace has got some beautiful, beautiful looking and some really great information. We're using Squarespace as our web host and love it. Okay, so that's kind of the people aspect. Now, looking at assessing risks. So, there's, depending on where you live, you're going to have different probabilities of risk, bad things. Like obviously in Florida and here, on the coast, not necessarily here, but out down by Myrtle Beach, North Carolina, obviously they have hurricanes are their number one threat. They happen fairly often. And does it seem like it's happening more often? Right? It's kind of crazy. Yeah, the frequency, right? So I'm sure there's some prophetic element to that. But, if you live on the western slope of the Rockies on the other side of Denver, where's our brother? Where is he? There he is. Yeah, so, he's brand new to the radio business. And he's got to think through, hey, what could happen on my side of the Rockies that could take me off the air? It might be flooding. You want to know where the high water marks run in your area. Hurricanes and tornadoes, you want to prepare your building for high winds, extreme rain, drainage and water flow problems. I had no idea that South Carolina gets all of North Carolina's flow. Everything coming off the Piedmont rolls right down into South Carolina, and I had no idea that Myrtle Beach and down there that was underwater. The West Coast, we've got some different problems. We've got earthquake threats, and I'm going through this. I'm going, oh my gosh, my equipment rack's not tied down. And the crazy thing about earthquakes is you've got zero warning, which is kind of nice because it removes all the pre-storm and all the build-up anxiety. You have none of that. But I was standing in the sanctuary, probably earlier, probably January, February. And I was standing in a conference room, and an earthquake happens. And it's an earthquake, except the whole building is swaying. And then my friend goes, oh, yeah, it's going to stop in a minute. I said, you don't know that. I said, it's the building's moving. He said, yeah, but it's calming down. I said, no, the building's moving. And 30 seconds later, the building was still doing this. Now, it made no bad noises, and it was fine, and we didn't feel like we were in any imminent danger, but I'll take a hurricane all day long over the building moving. Any case, wildfires. If you've got fires, Colorado, they have wildfire problems? Yeah, so you want to stay close to your fire department. One nice way to stay close to them is, introduce yourself and find out a way to get great information. There's a website called NCWeb, and the Cal Fire and then a lot of the California fire departments. They are the guys. They have really come up with some of the finest incident and logistics planning that there is. So the military's adopted some of it, and we had some of those guys in our fellowship. So I got some great coaching early on going through the Thomas Fire from some very experienced fire captains. Super thankful for all our first responders. Those are the people you want to talk to on the radio. You want to talk to them, doing PSAs, hey, pray for, or whatever you can think of. But reaching out to all those folks through your radio station is a great way, to minister to them, right? Because the first responders, they have a ridiculous amount of work that they do when you're in the thick of it. And they're incredibly dedicated. So, A, you want to minister to them, but B, if you have a relationship with them, you'll get phone calls. I got great information from one of the fire captains. Actually knew Montecito really well. Actually ended up getting rides in and out of Santa Barbara because we would ride in his big, serious fire SUV, and there was no roadblocks. There wasn't anywhere we couldn't go. It was great. So part of what happened at the Thomas Fire too is we had a tremendous number of law enforcement and military in the area, so that looting wouldn't happen, and that you could not go places unless you were escorted through it, and because they were just cordoned off and no people can go through. A main reason a lot of people couldn't go into certain areas is because they're removing boulders the size of cars, and it was just nonstop truck traffic in and out of these little tiny local roads. So tall trees, rock formations, things that could move in a storm, either a storm that's got a lot of water in it, or wind. You want to kind of look at your surroundings of where your radio station is. And a lot of this goes for where you live as well. Because what happens in your residence will have an impact on your performance at the radio station. So they're kind of connected. There's man-made risks you want to try and get your head around. Buried pipelines, exposed gas meters, do those pose a danger? Are they around you? Hazmat, hazardous materials, are they housed or transported nearby? Do you have train tracks nearby? We've got freight trains that roll through our area all the time, and I just never even thought that was a possible concern. It's probably not a probable concern. I don't know what's actually passing through and passing by us on the rails. But you get a nice train accident, or some not nice. If you had a train accident occur, how would you, if that would disrupt you in any way? You want to try and understand that. Attacks, biological, terrorist, or cyber. So I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. Why? I don't want to plan for that, right? Who wants to think about biological attack, a terrorist attack? But the truth is, again, going back to Louis Pasteur, the chance favors the prepared mind. When things happen that you have no control over, but you've had some time to think about it and process what you would do, it allows you to minister in a way that I don't think you can if you're not ready. We don't have to worry about these. None of these things are to worried about, right? We need to worry about terrorists, biochemical attacks, biological attacks. We need to worry about that. Why? Who's in control? Right? Not us. Right? Our Heavenly Father is. And you may go through difficulties, pain, and suffering. I know some folks that went through, in their lifetime, they went through two major business failures, not their fault. They got betrayed significantly, lost lots of money. And the Lord, in his making them more like Jesus, took them through that whole time. So pain, suffering, difficulty is not a reason to not abide in Christ, to not walk in the Spirit. It's not. The people that we are around, the people that know us, the people that listen to our radio stations are counting on us to stand, right? Ephesians chapter 6, all through that whole spiritual warfare scriptures, verses 10 to 18, it's stand, withstand, having done all to stand. He does the fighting, he works through in and through us, but we stand the ground. We don't give up, we don't quit. Yes, you need sleep. Yeah, you got to take care of yourself. You got to balance it out when things are kind of chaotic, and it's difficult. I spent a lot of nights awake wondering what the fire's going to do. Not wondering, just watching. I'd set my alarm every 3 hours, get up and see what's going on. Okay. Now, to lighten it up a little bit, can we run that clip?
Last week I gave a fire safety talk, and nobody paid any attention. It's my own fault for using PowerPoint. PowerPoint is boring. People learn in lots of different ways, but experience is the best teacher. Today, smoking is going to save lives. Does anyone smell anything smoky?
Did you bring your jerky in again?
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Fire! What's the procedure? What do we do, people?
The phones are dead.
Oh, how did that happen?
It's out in the hall.
No, we don't.
So, that's so funny. So just kind of lighten it up a little bit. So assessing your risk, just talking more about that. People, helping your staff and listeners make plans of their own. There's great PSAs out there to help people think about what they're going to do if there's a fire, there's a hurricane, there's flooding. Reviewing the security or the reliability and redundancy of your tower, your antenna, your transmitter, your microwave and studio transmitter links, other systems. You want to be aware of precisely what you actually need to stay on the air, what actually has to function. What you want to make sure all those things are on a UPS, and that your UPS is compatible with your generator. If you've got anybody have generator that powers up the station when things go sideways? Okay, yes. Yeah, WRDJ is a sweet 18 kW propane fueled generator. The generator, the electricity it generates is different than the stuff coming out of your outlets, and you have to have UPSs that are compatible with the frequency. There's some frequency fluctuation, and I don't know the science, so forgive me, Bob Moore. But there's a compatibility issue, so you need to be aware of that. Your supply chain, making sure your station is prepared for power failures, equipment breakdowns, because we might touch this again further on in the presentation, but because radio stations are critical infrastructure, you can actually get on, like at one point WRDJ in Maradona, Florida was on we got the propane first. We were on that list. No matter what was going on, and we needed protein, we got it before the regular people did. So there's advantages to being a radio station that will allow you to get access to critical supplies before everybody else. Because when your area is flooded or when access to normal roads is damaged and not normal, things get really different transportation-wise. News delivery. So assuming you're delivering some kind of news across your station or from your station, you want to plan for alternate methods of getting that programming out. So in talking about all the doing of this and making lists and assessing and considering and thinking, get help. Don't do that yourself. I mean, you can, but if you have a handful of people that are smarter and wiser than you want to have a team. You get them to walk with you. Tell them what you're thinking about and looking at, and get them to walk through with you. We've got an architect. A guy named Mike, who's just fantastic. We've got some engineers that work for Raytheon, just brilliant people that go to church there. So wonderful resources to help me think about, how do I need to develop KVRY's disaster plan. And the leadership of your church, is anybody not a church radio station? I don't want to assume anything. Okay. So most of you are responsible or accountable to church leadership, your pastor. They're helping you set your priorities, but they can be a great asset in helping you plan and assess and look at what the biggest threats are. And obviously, this whole process is kind of like eating an elephant, right? It's a lot, especially anybody just a single, like you're the only person that works there. Anybody there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So that can, adding this to your workload, yeah, no, not a chance. So, but pray for help. Pray the Lord send you help. But take it one step at a time. I'll have documents I can send you, and just do one thing about disaster prep. Take 20 or 30 minutes every other day, and just slowly go through it. Faster is better, absolutely. But if you happen to not have access or help and it is left to you and you've got You know, if you just make the time, you got to make the time. Because when things go sideways, there's no time to plan. All you're doing is reacting and making decisions. And even then, you know, obviously, you're not a victim of the circumstances, right? So, you know, the Lord is going to help you. You're going to have grace, even in your weaknesses. So just talking about the engineering side of things, remote, live, simulcast. I found out there's a friend of mine who runs Rincon Broadcasting, a bunch of different stations, big regional network. They may have had an agreement with the local TV station, and he hooked up a DVR into his console, and they were for a couple hours every day, they were just airing the TV coverage of the Thomas Fire and the mudslides. And the TV coverage happens to be great. We've got some wonderful local journalists that do a really good job. So that is a possibility. That's better. Well, it might be an aspect of programming you want to bring to your listeners. It might not be. It depends on what they talk about, how they communicate, what they're saying. We happen to have a really good bunch of local journalists. Okay, so you want to think about, could you broadcast from another location? Could your automation be on a laptop? But if you were going to broadcast from another location, how are you going to get there? You've got to look at one of the things that was crazy about the mudslides is there were a tremendous number of roads that you could not drive down. I mean, I almost walked. I was going to walk into Santa Barbara on the railroad tracks. And then we prayed and thought about it. It's like, yeah, that's probably not a good idea because we didn't know it was early on and we didn't know really what was going on. And there was no freeway noise. It was a really strange time. But if you really had to go somewhere, you were walking or riding a bike. And then let's say you are going to broadcast from another location. How long is it going to take you to restart your operations to get on the air? Can you originate programming from there? Can you hook up microphones? Can you if you're going to be live? Now, I know a lot of us, some of that just may not be something you would ever do. You're going to get your automation on. It's just going to do what it's going to do, and you're going to be doing whatever you're going to do, not there. And that's fine. That's what KVRY, that's what we do with KVRY. Again, KVRY for myself hasn't been a primary task. It's been like a secondary task. I've been involved with mixing live sound and producing a Sunday morning service, and KVRY has kind of been like the second or third thing. So going through all these things about how to plan for a disaster was like, yeah, Bracken, you have a lot of work to do. I was laughing at the amount of work I have to do for our own radio station. But the truth is, there's only so much time that you've got. So you just need to pray and do what God would have you to do. Along the engineering side of things, single points of failure. You want to know, as you look at your radio station and look at the computers, and you want to kind of know, where's the signal actually moving through? What pieces of equipment is it touching? Your internet's great, your internet access is great, your router's great in your station. How come I don't have any internet access? Well, because the router out where the service comes into the building, that wasn't on a UPS, and we lost power. As soon as I got that little thing on the UPS, boom, at WRDJ in Florida, internet for everybody. It was great. So you just want to be able to know in your mind where the electrons, right, the electricity that carries your audio and your programming, that passes through all kinds of equipment. You want to know what that is. Oh, hey, fun fact. How fast do radio waves travel, approximately? Like when they leave your transmitter, out the top of your antenna, how fast is it going? Anybody know? Not you guys. So I'm preparing to take a test in February. So the waves of energy that come out your antenna, they're traveling near the speed of light or speed of light. I thought it was like acoustic, so 700 miles an hour. And if you think about that, it doesn't make so much sense because that's not that fast. That's slow. So today's fun fact is what? Radio waves travel the speed of light. I knew you wanted to know that, and that's why I told you. Okay. Single points of failure. Looking at your signal chain, list the things that if it malfunctioned would take you off the air. Do you have a backup tower or auxiliary transmitter or another way to broadcast? We were super blessed by having some excellent radio missionaries, the Shropshire family, and they have a portable radio station on a trailer, and it's brilliant. They're also the guys that they're putting up towers, they're climbing towers, climbing 750-foot towers, and they do radio work in the Congo, putting up stations all over East Africa. Really, really neat, good brothers, good friends. Your studio transmission link, can you receive or deliver content another way? And then how will you talk to leadership, staff, essential volunteers, local public safety officials, and listeners? One of the things I wish we had, because the cell phone service was really, really bad for about a day, and it would have been fantastic just to key somebody up on a handheld radio. And we didn't have that in place, but it would have been very nice. Electricity and equipment. So, will you have electricity in a disaster? Under what conditions, or do you actually lose electricity? You can contact the power company; they can tell you about reliability, but you need to know what's going to remove the electricity from powering up your station. A backup generator, fuel contractor, talked about that earlier. Agreements with vendors and contract engineers for first right to obtain goods and services. You've got that. You can get that because you're a radio station. Sometimes the way things are engineered now, you don't actually have to have a contract engineer in your studio. I've fixed a number of problems that I had no idea about how to fix just on the telephone. So Jim Grossman in the Merritt Island area, great guy, NASA guy, super busy. But he talked me through some simple fixes. Shropshires too. I'm off the air, what do I do early on? The transmitters, I don't know. I didn't know what was going on. And they asked me, and in 5 minutes, bang, we were back on. The interlock, there's this little thing called the interlock. I hate it. This little jumper thing. And it was tenuously connected, and it just kind of, you're laughing. But as you understand the engineering side of what you're doing, you can get a lot done. You can get a lot more done than you think you can, especially, there's the people sitting in this room. Bang out an email. I need help. I'm off the air. I don't know what to do. Don't hesitate to reach out through the Google group, but better yet, have our phone numbers. Have phone numbers on. What do I do? It was really great to talk. When I left, Maureen and Alan were the Lord's provision that allowed my family and I to move and do what God's calling us to do in Santa Barbara. So after I moved, and Maureen and Alan, Maureen's running the station, and actually operating the equipment was kind of new for her. So we would talk often. And for me, it was, I had the whole thing, I'd been there 10 years, so I had it all memorized. I knew exactly, is this thing that color? No, okay, then press this. And I knew exactly what to tell her, and I could do that while I'm eating breakfast, no problem. So don't hesitate to call somebody on the phone with your voice. Texting is nice if you're late to dinner. Not so nice if you actually need an answer right away. So really encourage you to just call if you need an answer right away. Content. I wanted to leave some time to Q&A, so let me get through this quickly. You want to have an archive of all your future available programs. Matt and Genesis do a great job. There's 2 weeks sometimes up there. You want to? I have that. If something goes wrong, I don't want to rely on them to warehouse the content I'm going to be airing two Tuesdays from now. If for some reason you don't have your normal content, one time I made a CD that had an entire morning's worth of Bible teaching on it, and I went live and I did live. I can't remember what the problem was, but I was going live. I was doing all the breaks live, image ID, PSA, boom, play the CD for the next teaching. And you can run like that. One of the guys that runs the local network where we are, he wired in a DVR. He can play TV shows if he wants to. So that's that secular radio station. Actually, they have a K-Tide, a classic rock station. It's probably the most popular radio station in Santa Barbara, over the air anyway. But yeah, so creatively having your content in other places instead of where it normally is. Ambassador Advertising in Irvine, California, they've got a great device called, the name's escaping me, but it's a device that downloads, but it can play out as well. And they're not that expensive. Satellite feeds are another way to provide content. So when we're talking about, as a lot of us are LPFMs, how many LPFMs? Okay, so you can actually get, this is a blanket general statement. You can get a special temporary authority from the FCC. You have to apply for it, and I don't know, there's rules, all kinds of rules, and you can, but it's possible for me to air the local TV coverage of the Thomas Fire. That's something I could have arranged. You have to do ahead of time, you've got to get permission, but that is something that's possible. And those are some of the how-to about that. FCC's, their website, I've really been enjoying it a lot lately. I've been on it often, and I appreciate it. Appreciate the work they do. Talk to your attorney or broadcast engineer about these FCC things. You don't want to, unless you really know what you're doing, you want to get some advice first. Don't go into applying for anything with the FCC cold. Other considerations: high-strength glass, tethering equipment racked securely, anchoring computer monitors to desktops, just some practical things. Security in your facility, scheduling. I've been doing preventative maintenance on part-time radio work with a guy named Tom King, and it's been great. So I go to these 4 or 5 sites every month, and I've got the list I work through, and I write down, I note every light and what its condition. I take pictures, and it's given me just this wonderful, I've got a real nice comfort level now of walking into a transmitter room and knowing kind of what everything is. So I really encourage you to go, if your transmitter is close or close enough, get there monthly. Just to take 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes it takes an hour to get to these places, so you might want to plan a day, especially if you need to decompress and get out of the studio. Go get on a mountain, go to the transmitter site, and just get comfortable looking at it. Take pictures and just get comfortable, because someday you might have to be up there. So Ron, why don't you join me? Sorry if I went longer than I had planned, so forgive me. And I hope you'll be motivated to develop your disaster plan, whatever state it happens to be in. I do have a number of documents, boilerplate plans that are available. If you want to email me, just get to me through the Google group, or however you can get to me, and I'll be happy to share those with you. I've got a Google Drive folder that's got that content. So I know recently, Ron, I had no idea until we were talking, until that disaster special you guys did with Matt. I didn't realize you were so impacted by the storm. So, he's been working through, a flood situation. I've been through the Thomas fires and the mudslides, and some of you may have been through other events that have presented challenges in staying on the air and ministering to your people, right? Getting back to that. I want to really hammer on it's people we're talking to. Radio is just a tool in a context. So does anybody have any questions? I can't. I'm having my eyes are not doing great right now, so I can't really see.
We need another mic. Hold on.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just want to take some questions.
Joey. This is blue. Thanks, Joey. Let me tell them that
Yeah.
kind of what happened for us.
Yeah.
So we live in Myrtle Beach. It's obviously next to the ocean. Beach. And I have been working pretty hard in making redundant systems for our station. And let me tell you why I did that. We had a storm last year called Matthew that sat on top of us and dumped an ungodly amount of rain on us and caused us to have a 100-year flood. So we were only one of 3 stations on the air. Now, that may not be anything to you, but we have about 35 stations in Myrtle Beach. I mean, it's one of the, I forget, it's like the most densely packed small markets in the country. And we were one of 3 that was on. The biggest station in Myrtle Beach wasn't on. Our engineer, our local engineer, he works for iHeartRadio, 7 of them, all of them were off the air. We were on the air. And I went, okay, that's by God's grace, number 1. Number 2, then how can I continue to stay on the air in a disaster? So this year, we put a computer, we always have a computer, Bill Lukeman tells you that, have a computer at your transmitter site to remote into it so you're not remoting into your Nautel directly. So I figured, well, we have a computer there, let's load station playlist on that computer in the event that the studio is offline, at least we can be on the air. So we did that this year. We asked Ross.
Nice.
I sent Ross, who created Station Play. I said, Ross, I want to put a computer at the tower. He's like, no problem. I'll give you the code. Load it all up. We have Radio Spider. Everything that we have in the studio duplicates at the tower every night. It's the same thing. It's a redundant system.
Is it running?
And it's running.
Huh.
All I have to do, though, because Nautel only has a couple of inputs, the only downside of this is in the storm, you have to go out there, undo a wire, put the wire on. Because I have a microwave link, that's our main link, and then I have a tie line as my backup.
Right.
So my backup is the computer. Right. So until I can get that figured out. But
hey, Ron?
Yeah, where are you? Oh, jeez.
You actually can bring it into transmitter more than likely because I have the same setup.
Okay, well, you'll have to tell me how I can do that.
Right. All right.
So because our antenna is on one of the biggest stations, it's the talk station, they have a generator. We're in a concrete bunker. This building isn't going anywhere. I know I won't run out of power. They also have when the FCC or the FEMA, when you have a disaster, you sign up for that. That's what he was trying to tell you. You sign up for that, and you can get fuel to your In fact, you can even get a generator. If your generator goes out, the military will bring a generator to your site because you're radio. You just have to sign up for that in the beginning. Right. Once you're signed up for it, then once a disaster comes, they start sending you links and say, how are you doing? Do you need anything right now? Because you're important. You're a part of radio. You're a part of communication. So for us, it has been nonstop over the last year, making sure that every step in our chain, which I love that you said that, make sure you know what wire goes where and have backups for those. Bill and I have been talking about having a backup transmitter at the tower site that may be 50 watts, but 50 watts in a storm is still 50 watts.
Yeah, and so this commercial, Rincon Broadcasting in Santa Barbara, and KUSC, which is the University of Southern California, the NPR affiliate all up and down the coast where we are, they've got these backup transmitters. They're not full power, some of them. They're just like half wattage, but being on the air is better than being off the air. So I know you've got you've got a backup transmitter. It works mostly. Mostly. No, it's all right. Yes. Ready to grab a microphone real quick? That's right there.
Can I just ask if you guys have tested your backup systems before you've needed them and how you do that?
Yes, we test them. In fact, again, on your Nautel transmitter, which I hope that a lot of us have them, you should have the flash disk put in the back of it that has about 5 or 6 hours of programming that no matter what, if you go off the air, it goes to backup and you have something running.
Yeah.
We never go off the air ever unless the transmitter is on fire, right? Because I have a backup that's already in there and I can remote in, and that's if I can remote in and the station will be on. But we always are testing, and especially if I know a storm is coming in, I will go out to the site, and I love that. Go to your site once a month. Do you know how many spider webs you're going to clear out of your rack?
And rodents.
And yeah, so go to your site and look at it and make sure that you know how to fix the things that are there, and make sure you have backup wires and all of that. That's important, but we test it. We test the generators. We have a generator at the studio that just my dad and I put in the switching. It wasn't hard. It's a 3,000 watt generator that runs the studio. It doesn't run the church. It runs the studio.
Nice.
But we test those things.
Yeah.
And then when a storm comes in, we make sure that we have fuel. We make sure that we are ready for that. And we do. We test the backup, turning it over, making sure the computer is running station playlist. It can function. And I'm doing that kind of maintenance.
Hey, Ron, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
For our station, we have station playlists at the tower site as well, Radio Spider at the tower. And I actually have Radio Spider coming into my programming at the church, pulling my logs from the church. So if we have an internet outage, because we had been battling internet outages,
Bummer.
we go down for 30 seconds. It flips automatically to our computer at the tower site, and it picks right up where we left off on our programming, so nobody knows except for we blip for a second.
Nice.
And listen, Kevin knows station playlist. That's why he's doing a session more than anyone else I know in the room right now. So if you're running station playlist, and I know that even myself, it can do 1,000 more things that I'm having it do, and Kevin's been really helpful in that area. So
it's 5 o'clock. I know we're
One
headed
more
for
question.
I know, but yeah, we've got a couple more questions.
Just one
Yeah.
thing, just an observation.
Yeah,
So
of course.
the overall topic related to preparedness just brings up the idea that you want to have as part of your toolbox a resource toolbox. For example, people, volunteers that may be serving in emergency services that
Yes.
could act as your
Yep.
helpful volunteers.
Absolutely.
And familiar with preparation. The local Office of Emergency Management, county or state.
Yep.
In your state, it might be named a different name than ours, but it doesn't matter. They all
Exactly.
fall under Homeland Security. And they're more than willing to come out and actually
Yep.
help you go through a checklist. And
Yeah,
actually,
that's exactly right. I know in the Merritt Island area, the emergency management actually uses local. A few years ago, they used local DJ talent to man their own radio station, which is another great way to have the Lord use you in your local community. Yes.
Very briefly, most communities have emergency management people. Get to know them before the
Yes.
yes, get to know them before.
Yeah, Bob's saying get to know the emergency management people in your town. Know who they are, go to the meetings, just become familiar with them.
talk to the amateur radio community. The Sky
Oh, the ham guys, yep.
get a scanner.
Get a scanner.
Go,
Shortwave radio in case it's a national emergency.
Right.
go Bill.
Google CERT, C-E-R-T, that's the Community Emergency Response Team, CERT. It's
right.
a federal program. They have a training program that I've been through. They cover a little bit about everything. And the first thing they teach you is how to take care of yourself and your family.
Yep.
And then, if yourself and your family are okay, then you can be helpful to others. They said, if you just take care of yourself, that's one less phone call we're going to get at the firehouse. They
Yep.
taught us how to fight fires, how to handle injuries, how to
Nice.
tell if someone's dead or alive, all kinds of really interesting things. And it's nationwide CERT. Also, look at AliceTraining.com. Alice Training. It's an active shooter training that is really, really good. We've done it. All of our employees have done it. Most of our volunteers have done it. It's a computer-based training. We paid $8 a person for it. Soon, we're going to send some of our leaders out for instructor training, and then you can do drills to handle what you would do in an active shooter event. More likely to happen in your church than in your radio station, but if you're on the air and you say something somebody doesn't like, who knows, it could happen in there also. We have a school, so we're very concerned about it. So you might want to make note of alicetraining.com. Very helpful.
Church, anybody have church and a school on your same property? Anybody there? Yeah, so those two things together really, really increase the probability of having some violent
Yeah, you should write down
attack.
CERT training, and that's just a generic phrase to Google, but also alicetraining.com is a website. I just want to say on a backup transmitter, even if you can afford a backup transmitter that's just 1/4 of your regular power, that's more than enough to keep you going. So just an old junker will work fine. Maybe it's time to upgrade, and you can use your old one as a backup.
That's great, Bill.
Yep.
So one last thing about what we did. So before the hurricane came in, we ran PSAs, and you can get these PSAs online, and they have them specifically for your areas and for your state. South Carolina does. We had tornado PSAs, and we ran those because we just manually inputted them, because you can do that with station playlists and anything else. We put them probably every 25 minutes into rotation for 3 days. Then, after the storm, they had different PSAs about sewage, about cleaning your homes. We had floods. So how do you clean your homes? How do you disinfect? We ran those PSAs nonstop. All of that is free for you guys. Just, Google PSAs, flooding or hurricane or fire. All of that's there.
Did you get that at your state broadcasters association? That sometimes they've got great content.
Your state broadcasters association will have some of that. Your state broadcaster, as Bob will tell you, will come in and do a free audit too of your station and help you out and give you some pointers as well. But use the PSAs. Use online. When the storm finished and our church set up a distribution site and Mercy Chefs and we were feeding people, I ran some spots and said, hey, do you need help? Are you affected in the Socastee, Conway area, the areas that you were flooded? Here's the address. Here's the ability to come and get some relief support. You have a voice. Learn how to turn on your mic. Listen, we're all busy. I'm busy. I'm a senior pastor running a station, and I love automation. But at some point, you gotta hook up a mic to a board somehow, and you gotta turn it on at some point. And a disaster is that time to be able to speak to your community because they're hurting. I've seen it for the last 2 weeks. I saw that days. And it's right there, and they don't know what to do, and they need a meal, and they need love, and they need to know that when they're listening to your station, there is comfort there, because we all like to stay in that routine and playing that same program over and over, right, that they're used to. That brings them comfort. But hearing that mic go live, hey, we're here for you, we're praying for you, do you need help? I encourage you to do that. And that may just take a little bit of work. For some of you, you've got those networks already set up. But others, it's all automated. Learn how to turn it on. Amen? It is 5:07. Thank you for allowing us to go 7 minutes late. Go to dinner. Enjoy dinner. Be warm and filled. 7 o'clock. Lloyd Pulley and Neely music. Special music tonight.
Hey, Neely, is that related? Is that related to Lewis?
No.
No. Okay.